And welcome back, fourth and long fans. It's your footy correspondent, Coach Donnie Hess here, and I am back with another episode in my Aussie fan series. And ladies and gentlemen, I have a very special guest with me today, all the way from Melbourne, Australia, Mr. Terry Degani. Terry, how are you doing, sir?
Donnie, I'm doing very well. I'm very excited to be talking with you.
Awesome, awesome. So before we get into the footy talk here a little bit, I kind of like for my first question, kind of finding out who the person I'm chatting with is a little bit outside of the game of footy. So if you want, just a real quick bio on who Terry is.
Yeah, I'm a 30-year-old. I am a Carlton tragic. It's definitely part of my identity. Yeah, born and raised in Melbourne. I work in a range of different things. I'm a lawyer by trade. I do YouTube and I work part-time for a charity as well. And yeah, I've lived around the world. I've come home. I've come home to build this YouTube channel here and this platform. And yeah, it really is now part of the identity. You know, the club and the fandom and whatnot, and building something around it.
That's great. We'll chat a little bit more about your club, but right now let's focus just the tiniest bit just on the sport of footy, because being an American, again, I don't have the years of experience with footy, so I like asking this question to Australians. What is your favorite thing about the sport of football?
There's something about the energy of the game. I liken it not dissimilarly to the gladiators in the Colosseum. You know, when you go to the MCG, there's just something about it. It's almost like a war zone in a sense. A modern day war zone. You know, you've got 18 on the field for each side, so much space. It's a 360-degree sport. You can move in any direction, and I think the mix of speed, dexterity, power, skill, and you need to be very, very brave to play the game. I think it just all combines for this perfect storm. And yeah, there's just nothing else that I've watched or experienced which does it for me in the same way.
I can completely understand. When I found this sport, it's such a sensory overload because so much is happening. It's so many different aspects of different sports kind of throw in it too. It's like being an American, you look at it, you're like, there's parts of basketball, there's parts of cross country, there's parts of rugby. So it's really kind of this all encompassing sport. So it's absolutely awesome. So I'm going to make you think back just a littlest bit here. Can you remember your earliest footballing memory?
I can. Yes, I went to so for your audience, the Carlton Football Club used to play their home games at what we call Princess Park, and we don't play there anymore. But that was a very special place for the club, and so I remember flashbacks of going there and watching us play. I don't necessarily remember the game, in terms of the end score. I remember we played against St Kilda, but I do remember distinctly that energy and that spark, and I had that first memory of electricity and passion within the fan base in the stands. So yeah, I do remember that.
Awesome, awesome. My next question, I mean, you kind of answered it a couple of times, and the people watching the YouTube video, they already know you are a Carlton supporter, which I mean comes with its own headaches. But I gotta ask, why the Carlton Blues? I mean, I know you're a Melbourne based, but why the Carlton Blues?
I mean, so look, very early on in my life, had a bit of drama and trauma that was going on with my parents, and splitting up and divorcing and all of that, and it was just a very stressful time. And going to the footy was that first memory of release. Now, my mum was a Carlton fan, so I remember her taking me to the footy and then just being engrossed with this just this joy. And the Carlton fan base in particular is a very, very passionate one. And obviously we've got the history and whatnot. So for me personally, it was more of an escape away from, the harsh reality that I was living through as a child. And it was really just the first love. And I think that's where I feel this debt to pay back, this gratitude to pay back, because it became, a place or like a family away from the family.
And that's awesome. And so many people have, when I've discussed with them, say that the reason they support their club is for the family. And you said your mom is this a family reason that you support it, or is it kind of one of those where it's just you went with your mom? And then is there anybody else in your family that supports other clubs?
My grandfather supported Essendon, so that was an option. But yeah, mum was a Carlton fan. I don't know, she definitely wasn't as passionate about them as what I've become. But yeah, the club's very interesting in that once it gets you, that's it. It gets you and it pulls you in, and you can't help it. You fall in love with it, and then it really gets you forever. It's, to be honest, in life you go through life and you go through phases, as a child, Pokemon cards, and then there's TV shows, and then there's whatever else, and things come and go. But there's something about watching the Carlton Footy Club, and there's something about the club that has just stuck all the way through, even though it has been a very disappointing time in terms of wins and losses. There's something about it. It gets you. And if I could explain it, I would, but there's something internal.
Not a problem there. So I like seeing that with it being a family thing and being years on. Can you remember the first Carlton item that you were ever given or bought?
First Carlton item that I was given or bought, it would be my scarf. It would definitely be my scarf. And I remember getting a badge. My favorite player was Anthony Koutoufides. He was a very special player in the 90s. So I was born in 1991. So I do remember flashes of, going to the footy, in or about, 1996 to 1997 onwards. So yeah, I remember having my scarf, and I remember having my Anthony Koutoufides badge. And then from there, you got the Guernsey, and then his number was 43. So I would get the 43 on my back, and yeah.
Awesome. That's great. All great items. So I'm one of those, even being an American, I consider myself a diehard with the time change. I wake up at 2 a.m. to watch my team. My team's the Sydney Swans. So, and that's all that. And for me, I'm loving chatting with all these people, but I like hearing people kind of describe their fandom, as I call it, or their passion for their team. And I mean, you have a YouTube channel on this, so I know it's pretty high, but how would you describe your passion or your fandom for the Carlton Footy Club?
How would I describe it? I mean, I touched on it before. I think I realized just how much I loved the club when I left Australia. So 2017, left Australia, just, lived overseas for a few years. And I guess I remember thinking, okay, I was always into the footy because I could go, and I was, I live in Melbourne. I grew up in Melbourne. But it probably wasn't until I left where I realized how much I really did love it, and how much it was a part of me, because I had to stay connected. I had to watch every game. It was a non-negotiable, no matter what the time difference was. Meeting Australians, talking to Australians, whether it's in Australia or outside of Australia, who's your favorite footy team? It always comes up. It's just part of, I think for Melburnians, it's part of our identity. So it sort of starts there. And then, yeah, once I left the country, and I realized I didn't have any friends overseas because I was, starting a life in a new country. I, then decided to stay in touch with, the only family that I knew I could stay in touch with that wasn't my own, and that was the Carlton supporters. So yeah, for me, it was, I started with an audio podcast as a means to do that. And yeah, I think I learned then that this is more than just you have loves and you have interests and you have things that you like to do, but no, this is more than that for me. This is part of my life, and I think if you speak to anybody who's met me at any phase of my life, whether it be through primary school, high school, university, and even my working career, they'll always have that common thing like, what do you know about Terry? Oh, he's the Carlton guy. So it's just followed me through, and it's just something that is now well and truly part of my identity.
Love the passion. Absolutely. That is fantastic. And you find a way to share your passion with other people, which I think that's fantastic. It's one of the reasons why I do this podcast as well because I love sharing the passion of footy. Yes, I love the Swans, but I love footy as a sport in and of itself. So we'll move on to the next question I have is, can you remember the first Carlton game you ever attended?
Well, yeah, like I said before, it was this game against St Kilda at Princess Park. I don't necessarily remember the score. I just remember little flashbacks in my memory. I remember screaming out certain things. I remember random goals, and I remember, the roar of the crowd. I'm pretty sure that was the first game I went to. Like, I remember getting on the train, and I remember coming home on the train from that game. But I don't remember much else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. And for me, that's the one thing that I'm my bucket list is I want to get over to Australia. I want to see a game live, whether it's an SCG, MCG, no matter where. I want to see a game live because USAFL is fine, but it's not the same. It's not the professional game. It's not the pure form of the game. So,
Oh, mate, we got to get you to the MCG. We got to get you to primetime MCG, 85,000 people. That's where we got to get you.
If we could work out a way for Sydney to play down in the MCG, I'd do a double. I'd do the SCG and the MCG in a weekend. I definitely do that for sure. My next question, you answered half of it already. You already said your favorite player of the past is Anthony Koutafidis, but who's your favorite player currently, or do you have one? I mean, I know it's not easy. Some people, it's like picking your favorite child.
Yeah, so it was Anthony Koutafidis, and then my memory of Carlton's interesting because we had a very bad period in the early 2000s with the salary cap scandal, and we were finishing on the bottom of the ladder. It was just a very dark time, and so there weren't many players to latch onto because they were constantly coming and going. But Mark Murphy was drafted in, he was the number one pick in the 2005 draft. And I just latched onto him. He was the young gun. He became a really good player. So he just retired at the end of season 2021. So he's been my favorite player since. And now it's time to anoint, the crown of my new favorite player. I'm going to say Liam Stocker. He wears number 13. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to say he's now my favorite.
Heck of a player, I'll tell you that. Not the usuals. You see the stars, the Walshes, the Sods, the Williams, the Cripps, the Mackays, maybe are the people. So hearing Stalker, that's a good one. I really, really appreciate that because I for me, my favorite on the Sydney Swans is not always one of those well-known ones, and that's Dane Rampy. I love what Rampy does for the Swans. He's such a great player, and he's not the big superstar type of personality. He plays his game and he plays it well. So that's one of those that I always like having discussions, hearing people's favorite player. I know there hasn't been a ton of great memories over the last few years. Again, not trying to pick scabs, but can you remember your most memorable moment as a Carlton supporter?
My most memorable moment. I mean, the common answer will be the 2013 elimination final against Richmond. The 2011 elimination final against Essendon was very special because it was a final and we beat them by 10 goals. But I like to tell the story about a particular game. It was round 3, 2012, Friday night. It was against Collingwood, the arch rival. And we had started our rebuild in 2005, at the end of 2005. And then finally, the group had started really coming together, and we played finals in that 2011 elimination final against Essendon, and then 2012 was the year. Everything was about to come together. We had a few years of experience, and heartbreak in the finals, but we were ready to just go to that next level. Collingwood had just come off a grand final berth. They were the top team, one of the top teams in the league. So we had started 2-0, and we beat them by 10 goals on this Friday night. And I'll never forget the way we played that night. I'd never seen anything like it. We were tougher, harder, quicker. We were just better in every facet, and we completely dismantled them. And I'll never forget the feeling after that game of, oh my God, we're going to win the flag. And I was completely convinced after 3 rounds that we were going to win the flag. Unfortunately, we had shocking injuries to key players in the next few weeks, and it didn't happen. And it was a complete disaster thereafter. But I do remember that game so clearly, and just that feeling. I've never been so confident in the team than what I was that night.
Yeah, and definitely, especially when you beat the old rival. It's one of my favorite things here in the discussion between Carlton and Collingwood is one of those. that fierce rivalry. Absolutely love it. So we'll go from the past. We talked a little bit of the past in the previous questions. Now we'll kind of go to the present. This last season was kind of one of those. It was a roller coaster. At times it was great. At times we'll not go there. What were your thoughts on last year's Carlton team?
Disappointing, to be honest. To be totally honest, and I look back at the season, and there's probably only 2, maybe 3 games that I would genuinely watch again. We've gone through a second wave of a rebuild. We started a new one in 2015. We drafted heavily, and this was now year 6 from that point onwards. And last year we went and recruited some players who were in the peak of their careers in Zach Williams and Adam Sard. And I guess the expectation was that this year 2021 was going to be the year where we started really making inroads to playing finals football and starting the journey there. Because I just feel like to win a premiership, you've got to at least make the finals a couple of times and taste it before you can rise up. Not all the time, but most of the time. So I think the expectation crippled a lot of the fans, and, rightly or wrongly, it's been a long time. We have a lot of talented players on this list, and we just could not get the most out of them. And to be honest, it was so interesting because we had 3 genuine young superstars of the competition emerge, let alone Carlton. So that was good. But ultimately, I really do feel like it was a wasted year because of how talented I think our boys are.
Yeah, I completely agree that Carlton was one of those teams that at the start of the season I pegged as the wild card to get into the finals that some people weren't talking about. Like I love Walsh, I love Cripps. Mackay comes out of nowhere, has a great season. In the additions of Sod and Williams, I thought you had a couple of speedsters you could put at the wing or maybe even the halfback line, and you could be a deadly team coming out of the halfback line. And it just never really came together. I don't know how to kind of state it any more than that. So it's they're going to be an interesting team to keep an eye on over the next couple of years, because it's how does Walsh progress? How does Mackay progress? Does Sod and Williams find their niche place in that team as well? So I'm one of those, I keep an eye on the off season as much as I can. Again, the time change sometimes makes it difficult. So, and with your podcast, I know you keep an eye on it. So what are your thoughts kind of on Carlton's off season this year?
Yeah, look, it's been a big off season. You don't get an off season like what we've had very often, if at all. And what I mean by that is we have completely cleaned out everyone on the coaching panel, bar Luke Power. So, we obviously brought in some players through the trade period, which were good. We lost a couple of players as well, but we got a completely new coaching panel. And so with that, I'm very excited. We also got a new CEO who has been, one of the most, if not the most successful CEO of the modern era. And, it really is just go time. There needed to be serious changes made, and there needed to be serious decisions made, because it was bitterly disappointing for the fan base who pour in so much. Forget about the money that gets poured into the club, but it's just people's time and emotion and deep-seated support. So yeah, I'm optimistic about what we've done in this off season. However, I'm 30 years old now, and I've lived through many off seasons now where we've had rebuilds and changes and players come in. So I'm a little damaged. So I'm a little scarred, and I have faith that we have put the right people in the right places now, and we've made the changes that needed to be made. But there is still this trepidation that it won't be solved. But I am optimistic and hopeful.
Good. And that's kind of a perfect kind of transition. And I've said this to a lot of people, is that I hate the word expectations. For me personally, I hate having expectations of what I want in the season, because you just don't know. The season is a crapshoot. You never know when Sam Walsh might tear an ACL in game one and he's done for the year. How does that affect the team? So do you have any expectations for the Blues next year? I mean, are you thinking finals footy or bust, or are you still going to kind of, how does it gel after a new coaching staff and some new players coming in?
Finals football, Donnie. It's finals football. This is the Carlton Football Club, and this is not it. Like enough is enough. Like it's time, and we've put years of experience into these kids that we've drafted who are now becoming men and stars in their own right. And yeah, even the new president that came on board, and he made it very clear next year the expectation is finals. Now, if we don't make finals next year, well, we'll deal with it then. But I think I want to start with us playing in a way that you just want to be proud of, and that a tough, physical, competitive finals type football brand is what I want to see. But yeah, absolutely, the expectation is finals footy, because I think we're good enough, and I'm sure there are other teams that think they're good enough as well. But it's just been too long, and it's just time.
Yeah, I completely understand with the list that you have and the expectations. I don't think you're jumping too high off a cliff, but as I've stated to a few people, there's just going to be so many good teams. Making the finals next year could be a murderer's row. Thinking about Richmond could be healthy. The Doggies and the Demons are going to be just as good next year. How are the Swans going to be? How does Frio do? Because Frio's still a young team as well. Your mob could be of quite an interesting little one. The West Coast Eagles bounce back. GWS. You could count off 10 to 12 teams that could potentially be finals. So I'm really looking forward to next season already, and we've just ended not too long ago. So, alrighty. Being an American, I think one of the things that a lot of Americans we like having control. So many of us play video games where we're the general manager. We make the moves and everything like that. So I always have this fun little question. I'm going to install you as the list manager for the Carlton Footy Club right now. You get first move, but all the other 17 clubs lists are fully open. You can get any player you want from any of the 17 lists in the competition. Who's the first person you bring to the Carlton Footy Club, and why?
Good question.
It's a fun one.
Yeah, it is a fun one. The first person I would bring over if I had total freedom, I'd probably say Marcus Bontempelli. I think the idea of him and Cripps in the same midfield would just be, and Walsh now, would just be unstoppable. I mean, I'm tempted to say Christian Petrarca, but I think Bontempelli, I'm a big fan of how he goes about it. And I think the pairing of him and Cripps, they're both very similar in height. I think we wouldn't lose too many clearance opportunities throughout the ground. So I'll go with Bont.
It'd be a scary, scary thought process of Bont, Walsh, and Cripps as your midfield. That would be a scary, scary thought process there. So, being a Melburnian, I want to ask this question because I've found fascinating the discussion how it has changed. The previous 2 years, the grand final has unfortunately been played outside of Victoria. It's been on foreign soil at the Gabba in Perth, and surprisingly, I've heard footy media, especially Victorian footy media, starting to throw out, is there any thought process that potentially the grand final could be a traveling grand final? I know about the MCC in its contract, so we're going to suspend reality for just a tiny second. Are you one of those? It needs to be at the MCG, same time, no change. It needs to be tradition. Or is there a little part of you that kind of didn't mind that this could potentially be a traveling grand final in the future?
I mean, I think the MCG is where it should be played purely. I mean, okay, to see it play at Optus Stadium, I'm not totally opposed to it, because Optus Stadium is a really beautiful stadium. I don't think there's any other stadium which has the same impact. Having said that, for me, there's just nothing like watching a game at the MCG, and I'm sure the players would say playing a game at the MCG. There's just something special about the feeling of it. So am I opposed to the night grand final? Not really. I'm definitely one that enjoys change and innovation. But I think in terms of where the grand final is played, I think the MCG is the spot. And I think everyone. I mean, I think as a player, I think all of them would agree. I don't want to talk on all of their behalf, but I think that's kind of why you play footy when you grow up as a kid. You want to play in grand finals of the MCG in front of 100,000 people. There's no other stadium that can fit that many in Australia. So yeah, I'm definitely one to have it stay at the MCG, and particularly if when the Blues are in the grand final, it's definitely going to have to be there for me.
Awesome. And there is no wrong answer. It's fun to speculate for me
Mm,
because it's just very interesting because you do get a lot of the Melburnians are like, we want it here, we want it here. But I do kind of understand the argument of if this is a national competition, why does it have to be in one place? So
mm.
again, there's no right answer in this one. I like hearing you answer it. So I am a big fan of the AFLW. Though the Sydney Swans are not in the competition yet this year, they won't be till next year. I've been keeping an eye on it. I've done weekly round reviews for last season. I think the product is getting better and better. So do you keep an eye on the AFLW? And if so, what were your thoughts on Carlton's season last year?
I do keep an eye on the AFLW. So I missed season one while I was living abroad. And then when I got back, I started watching it. I guess anybody who's wearing the Carlton football club emblem gets my attention. It's been a very interesting transition because we've lost quite a few senior players. In the last 12 months, and even the season before that. So I think the girls would be disappointed with how their season last year ended. I think they should have been playing. I think they were good enough to play finals footy. And now it seems like all of a sudden we've given the responsibility of the club from the AFLW side of things to a really, I guess, smaller group of leaders, young women. And I'm very interested to see how we go because it seems like we've consolidated the list. We've lost the likes of Taylor Harris, who's a big name. Jess Hosking is also a very good player, was a very good player for us. And her sister Sarah left the year before. So we're now having to replace them. But having said that, there's a few others coming through. Lucy McAvoy started really coming into her own towards the end of last season. And she's a high draft pick. So you hope that she will help that rise and that loss of Jess Hosking. But there's quite a few youngsters. And I think I'm still not sure if they're a group that are going to take some short-term pain because of the transition in order to get that long-term success. But I am excited nonetheless. And when you have the best player in the competition in Maddie Prespakis, I think that's a good starting point.
I completely agree with you. It'd be very interesting to see that first game between Geelong and Carlton when the Sparkus sisters potentially could face each other. That's going to be a fun game to keep an eye on. So I like having some fun towards the end of my interviews. And for me, Americans, we love to eat. We'll be honest there. So I've always been fascinated, and I want to know, when you go to the footy, what's your go-to food at the footy?
To be honest, I don't eat a lot at the footy or drink a lot. It's a very, very tense time. Tense, but also it's my happy place.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so in love with that 3 hour, 2.5 hour, 3 hour block. So I don't really eat at the footy. I might have a beer before the game. I might nibble on some chips. I'm probably not the right person to ask in terms of what's the traditional thing you eat, because a lot of people will say, yeah, got to go to the footy and get a pie with some tomato sauce and whatnot. But yeah, I'm very much, I get to the game, I have to be at the stadium an hour before the bounce minimum. I just like to sit there and just soak it up and smell the air and just visualize, okay, what am I going to see today? And put my bets on and chat to people. So yeah, my experience is a little different, but definitely I'll say I have a beer, but I don't eat.
That's not a problem. Hey, to each everybody fans differently. I know people that will get there. They have to have a pie, they have to have a bucket of chips, they have to have a jelly donut, they have to have something. So everybody's different, so there's not a problem there. So we'll stay with that. When you go to the footy again, I haven't seen a game there, and I'm hoping very soon. Where's your ideal place to sit and watch the footy?
Ideal place would be, I would say, on the wing. Um, I love level one, because level one's just really where the soul is. I mean, as you start, I mean, level two is a really, it's probably the best view that you can get, but I don't think you get the same soul of the fan base. It's a little bit more subdued. So I like sitting on level one, probably 10 to 11 rows up. So you get a little bit of elevation. And then smack bang in the wing, you've got the goals on either end. So yeah, that's the ideal spot for me.
Awesome. That is awesome. So, as I kind of stated earlier, this is a channel that does primarily American sports, NFL, different stuff like that. But occasionally, an American may click on this video and who's the Carlton Football Club. So, if they've got this far, I thought let's give them an opportunity. So, if you really quick, could you give us your best pitch on why an American should be a Carlton Footy Club supporter?
You should be a Carlton Football Club supporter, ultimately, because first of all, look at the logo. It's very distinct what we have here. It's a very powerful logo, and I think and the color, the navy blue color, is also very powerful as well. A rich history. There's a fascinating story of the Carlton Footy Club from, you know, especially when we had the influx of the migrants in, you know, the early 1900s, who then gave the club some soul and some character. And, you know, we have father, son, grandson combinations that have played as well. And ultimately, the Carlton Football Club is a family. And once you experience that, your life is really never the same.
That's absolutely fantastic. That is a great pitch. And my last question that I always ask, and it's always fun for me because I like hearing the differentiation. Why? So I like asking, what's your favorite game of footy that you have ever seen? It doesn't have to be a Carlton game, but what's your favorite game of footy that you've ever seen?
2018 grand final, West Coast Collingwood. What a time to be alive, Donnie. What a time to be alive to watch Collingwood up by 30 points in the grand final, lose by a point. Oh, what a time.
Oh, I gotta be honest with you. A lot of people over here that are footy fans, we hopped on Mason Cox a little bit. So I know that you probably enjoyed seeing the old rival find a way to lose a grand final, and but I have to say I was barracking a little bit for Mason Cox to be able to be an American to win into a grand final, but that is still one of my favorites. It is hard to argue that that was not an absolutely exhilarating game of footy for sure. Terry, this has been an awesome conversation, but unlike some of my others, you do have a YouTube channel and you're rocking the shirt, the Blue Abroad channel. So I'm gonna let you take this opportunity really quick just to kind of explain to somebody that's listening what the Blue Abroad YouTube channel, what do you do there? Kind of what goes on the channel?
Yeah. So, I mean, ultimately, it's a fan engagement platform. And it's a Carlton fan channel. And the idea really behind it was that, you know, footy media needed to evolve in Australia. I'm a big fan of American sports, and I think, you know, the Americans set the standard for how to cover sport, and you have a lot of fans that are now taking over the conversation. So, you know, in Australia, we have a select few journalists that cover 18 teams. It doesn't work. And it needs to evolve. And so with fans, we'll watch the game. The experience has traditionally been watch the game, wait until Monday for the talk shows. You might get 3 or 4 minutes coverage if you're a Carlton fan because we're very popular, and that's it. So the idea is fans should dictate the conversation about the club, and therefore fans should be the ones that create the content and therefore dictate the media around the club. So that's really what it's all about. We have 6 shows on the channel, which are done by, you know, myself and others. And really, it's just a community for us to come and consume content and talk about the club and talk about everything that's happening, all the news, all the games, every little bit of information. And you know, I think post game as well is important. We now do fan cams, so I sit and talk to people. It's kind of like talk back radio, but for the 21st century. So it becomes a bit of a therapy session after games if we lose, and a celebration when we win. So that's really what it's all about. It's about a place where all the Carlton fans can come and talk and consume all things Carlton.
That's actually that is fantastic. That's a great idea. Way to jump on that. I agree. It's like it gives an outlet for fans to do something. I know talk radio was massive over here. You get people that they lose one game and you get a person calling in, I'm never gonna support this team ever again. So it is worth the price of admission sometimes to listen to that. So that's absolutely awesome. So keep that up. That is great. We will definitely, for anybody that's listening that is a Carlton fan, if you're not on Blue Abroad, check it out. It is an awesome platform for you guys there. So Terry, this has been a fantastic conversation. I'm glad we were able to connect and have a chat. I know it's never easy sometimes with the time change between Melbourne and the US here. So thank you for hopping on the podcast. I genuinely appreciate you coming on.
No, mate, it's the honor is mine. It's really cool to have such conversations with with those that are not in the country and haven't grown up with the sport. So please keep doing what you're doing. I know you might not feel it, but you really you having your platform and creating content from the US is really important for the game to grow. And I think these are the little baby steps that we are taking to help make the game a little bit more global. So thank you for reaching out and having me on.
Not a problem at all. Into any, if you ever need somebody to chat Swans Carlton game, let me know. I'd be more than willing to hop on the channel. I can talk Carlton, I can talk Sydney, I can talk footy. I'd love to talk footy. So if you ever need me for a show for Blue Abroad, just reach out and let me know.
All right. 2022 Carlton Sydney preview. Lock it in. You're with me.
That would be awesome. I would look forward to it. I cannot wait. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode in my Aussie fan supporter series. More are still coming. Keep an eye out. Terry, have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful day, sir.
Thank you very much. And likewise.
I will do my best that I can. And ladies and gentlemen, we will be back with another episode coming very soon.